Welcome. In this explainer, we're going to dive into a role that is absolutely crucial for any project's success, but, it's often a bit misunderstood. We're talking about the project's sponsor.
So, let's start with a little brain teaser. When you picture a project, who do you think is the single most important person on it? Is it the project manager, the one juggling everything? Maybe it's the star developer, the one with all the technical genius. Well, the answer might just surprise you.
Yep, we are focusing on the project sponsor. But let's be honest, that title sounds a bit dry, a bit corporate, doesn't it? So for our journey today, let's ditch that title and think about this role in a much more exciting way.
Okay, so here's the official textbook definition. They're the senior exec who is ultimately on the hook for the project, the one person who is accountable for its success and for making sure it actually delivers the goods. It's a huge weight on their shoulders for sure.
But let's throw that corporate jargon overboard, shall we? From this point on, I want you to think of the sponsor as the captain of a ship. The project? That's their grand voyage. And they're the one responsible for seeing it through, from the first gust of wind to docking safely in port. Trust me, this one idea will totally change how you see this role.
Every epic journey, whether it's sailing the seven seas or launching a new piece of software, doesn't start with a cannon blast. Nope, it begins with a map and a really solid plan. This is where our captain's story really gets going, long before the ship even feels the water.
So, the captain's first orders are all about giving the quest shape and purpose. First, they have to champion the idea, really sell the why behind this whole adventure. Then, they own the business case, which, let's be honest, is basically the treasure map showing everyone the amazing riches at the end. Next, they hire their trusty first mate. That's the project manager. And finally, they secure the initial funds to get the ship stocked and ready.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, having a great idea is one thing, but getting the people with the purse strings, the king and queen if you like, to actually bankroll this grand adventure, that's a whole other kettle of fish. So, how do they pull it off?
Well, a brilliant captain doesn't just go on about the gold and jewels. They show how this specific voyage, this project, perfectly aligns with the entire kingdom's grand strategy. It's about the bigger picture. They also get other powerful people on side early on, building a strong coalition of support before they even ask for the money.
Right. With that initial approval in the bag, the planning kicks into high gear. The captain and their first mate pore over every detail of the plan. They set the rules of the voyage, they assemble the full crew, and only then do they go back to the board and say, okay, we're ready, release the full funding, it's finally time to set sail.
Now, this is one of my absolute favorite concepts, setting tolerances. The captain and the project manager have to agree, right up front, on what's a small problem versus a full-blown emergency. It's about knowing the difference between a spilled cup of tea on the deck, a minor inconvenience, and that chilling sound of scraping against an iceberg while the band starts playing a rather sad tune. And we are off! The voyage is underway. The ship is slicing through the waves. But we all know the open sea is full of surprises. Crazy weather, weird currents, and maybe even a sea monster or two. Welcome to the execution phase. During this part of the journey, the captain's mantra has to be eyes on, hands off. Think of it this way. Their eyes are glued to the telescope, scanning the horizon. They're chairing the big meetings, checking the ship's progress, making sure they're still heading for the right island. But their hands are off. They are not swabbing the decks or mending the sails. That's the first mate's job, the project manager, and their crew.
Okay, but what happens when things really go sideways? I'm talking a huge storm that blows you completely off course, or a legendary kraken of a technical issue that suddenly bursts out of the deep. The first mate, the PM, has tried everything, but this is way bigger than them. What happens now?
This is when the captain grabs the wheel. They are the ultimate point of escalation. They use their authority to smash through organizational barriers, like another ship from your own fleet getting in the way. They make those gut-wrenching calls about changing course, and crucially, they keep the king and queen back home calm, reassuring them that the voyage is still on track and the treasure is still worth it.
Land ahoy! After all that drama on the high seas, the ship finally reaches its destination. But hold on, the voyage isn't over the second you spot the shoreline. A professional landing is every bit as important as the journey itself.
So here's how they do it. The captain formally accepts that the mission is accomplished. They make sure the crew gets their due, all the paperwork is filed, and the ship is properly docked.
They sign off on the official captain's log, capturing all those important lessons learned, and then they report the triumphant results of the voyage back to the kingdom.
The crews had their celebration, the ship's in the harbor, but the captain's job has one final, absolutely critical phase. Remember, this voyage was always about the treasure. Now it's time to heave open that chest and start counting the doubloons. Remember that treasure map? The business case from the very beginning that promised a specific pot of gold? Well, our captain is now accountable for making sure that promised value actually shows up, long after the project team has moved on to other adventures.
See, the sponsor owns the benefits. They're the one tracking performance to see if the treasure was as valuable as promised. And as you can see here, sometimes a really well-captained voyage brings back even more treasure than anyone dreamed of. And if it doesn't, well, it's the sponsor's job to figure out why.
So, as we pull into our final port of call, let's take one last look at the captain's log. It's fascinating to see how the sponsor's role changes so dramatically as the project voyage progresses. Right at the start, in that initiation phase, they are the visionary. They're the ones staring out at the horizon, dreaming of what's possible, and telling everyone else why the kingdom absolutely must undertake this quest. Then, during planning, their role completely shifts. They become the master shipwright. They're the architect, making sure the ship itself is designed perfectly, has all the right resources, and is tough enough for the dangerous journey that lies ahead.
During that intense execution phase, they transform again, this time into the guardian of the voyage. Their job is to protect the mission, to navigate through the fiercest storms, and to be the ultimate decision-maker when the waves are crashing over the deck.
And finally, long after the ship is docked, they become the storyteller, the one who confirms the mission's success, shouts about its value from the rooftops, and makes sure everyone understands the true worth of the treasure. The captain's voyage is complete, but the real question for any project is, who's your captain? Because without one, you're just a ship without a rudder, lost at sea.